Have you ever wondered what happens when you finally stop reaching out? When you stop checking in? When you stop giving endless chances? When you finally choose yourself over someone who continuously overlooks your worth? Let me tell you, she notices, and in that moment, the power shifts. But here's the thing, this isn't about playing games or manipulating anyone. This is about self-respect. It's about recognizing that your time, your energy, and your love are valuable. It's about understanding that if someone isn't willing to reciprocate, then your efforts are wasted on them. The Stoics believed that true power lies in controlling what you can, your actions, your emotions, your presence. You're not disappearing to punish her. You're removing yourself because you refuse to be taken for granted. And guess what? That's silence. It speaks louder than words. In this video, we're going to break down why stepping back isn't just a strategy, it's a mindset. A mindset built on self-worth, discipline, and the undeniable truth that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away. Because walking away isn't just about leaving someone behind, it's about moving toward a better, stronger version of yourself. Before we dive in, take a second to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. If you've ever been in a situation like this, drop a comment below saying, "My presence is a gift." Now, let's get into it. She thought you'd always be there. When someone believes you'll never leave, they stop appreciating you. She got comfortable. She assumed you'd always be available, always patient, always forgiving. But here's the hard truth. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Marcus Aurelius warned against taking anything for granted, and relationships are no different. If she no longer sees your value, step back and let reality teach her the lesson. Think about it. When something is always within reach, it starts to feel ordinary. That song you once loved? If you hear it every day, it fades into background noise. That's exactly what happens in relationships. If she never has to wonder about you, never has to question whether you'll be there, she stops seeing you as someone to cherish. She starts assuming that no matter how she treats you, you'll still be there, waiting, hoping, chasing. But the moment you pull away, the moment you go silent, everything changes. When she texts and doesn't get a response, when she checks her phone and sees nothing from you, when she realizes the space you used to fill is now empty, that's when she feels it. Not because you told her, not because you argued or begged, because your absence teaches the lesson for you. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." The moment you remove yourself from a situation where you're being taken for granted, you stop suffering, and you let her start learning. Because here's the truth, people don't appreciate what they believe will always be there. But when you take that presence away, when you create space, when you force them to acknowledge the emptiness left behind, that's when they start questioning everything. They start remembering the little things, the ways you showed up for them, the comfort you provided, the security of knowing someone cared, the way you made them feel valued, heard, and appreciated. But now that safety net is gone, and that's when reality sets in. Suddenly, she realizes what she lost. And it's not just about missing you, it's about understanding that genuine people don't stay where they aren't valued. It's about coming face to face with the truth that she assumed you would always be there. And now, she's forced to wonder if she made the wrong assumption. Your absence hits different. People don't recognize the value of something until it's gone. She might have ignored your messages before. She might have brushed off your efforts. She might have convinced herself that you were just there, that your presence didn't matter all that much. But the moment you disappear, silence hits harder than any words ever could. Seneca said, Loss is life's best teacher, and now she's learning. When you were always checking in, always showing you cared, she had no reason to question your presence. It was comfortable, predictable, too easy. But now she feels the absence, the missing notifications, the lack of attention, the realization that you were a privilege, not a given. At first, she might enjoy the freedom. She might convince herself that she doesn't care. But give it time. One day she'll instinctively reach for her phone, expecting a message from you. She'll hear a song that reminds her of you. She'll pass by a place you once went together. She'll scroll through old messages, wondering why it feels like something is missing. And it will hit her, not all at once, but in waves. Because deep down, she knew you were different. She knew you genuinely cared. And now, she understands a painful truth. Genuine people don't stay where they aren't appreciated. And the worst part? She might not get another chance to fix it. That's when regret starts creeping in. She wonders if she made a mistake, if she misjudged what she had, if she let go of something she should have held on to. But here's where the real power lies. You're no longer waiting for that realization. You're not sitting by the phone hoping she finally gets it. Because when you stop chasing, you gain clarity, you gain peace, you gain control over your own life. Instead of dwelling on why she didn't appreciate you sooner, you move forward, understanding that someone who truly values you will never need to lose you to see your worth. You learn that your happiness isn't tied to someone else's acknowledgement of your value. It's something you cultivate for yourself. And that's the lesson. When you stop chasing, you step into your power. You prove to yourself that you were never dependent on her attention or validation. You were always enough on your own, and by the time she realizes what she lost, you'll already be onto something better. Better people, better opportunities, a better, stronger version of yourself, because that's what happens when you stop chasing. You stop settling. You're no longer an option. She assumed you'd always be there, that no matter how much she pulled away, neglected your presence, or took you for granted, you would still be waiting. You were reliable, predictable, always available at the snap of her fingers. And that comfort made her careless. Epictetus said, "Attachment makes people careless." When someone believes they have something secured, they stop valuing it. They stop putting in effort. And that's exactly what happened. She thought you were a given, a constant in her life. She assumed that no matter how she treated you, your affection would remain unchanged. But then one day, you were gone. And that changes everything. Now, she starts to wonder. She notices the silence where your voice used to be, the absence of your messages, the missing validation she once dismissed. The shift unsettles her. The comfort she took for granted is no longer there, and suddenly she feels a growing sense of loss she never anticipated. Think about it. A man who constantly texts first, always seeks reassurance and begs for attention. Predictable, easy, taken for granted. But a man who knows his worth? A man who walks away without saying a word. He's unforgettable. There is a psychological power in absence. When you were always present, she didn't have to think about you. But now that you're no longer an option, she can't stop thinking about you. Why isn't he chasing me anymore? Why is he so calm? Did I make a mistake? Doubt creeps in, and suddenly the tables turn. This isn't about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about self-respect. You tolerated neglect because you valued her, but now you value yourself more. You stopped settling for less than you deserve. And in doing so, you shattered the illusion that you would always be there, waiting. When a man walks away without drama, without resentment, he exudes confidence. He sends a clear message. I am not an option. I am the prize. And that realization strikes harder than any words ever could. She now faces the truth that she lost someone who truly cared, someone who was once devoted, and now she can't just have you back at her convenience. And that realization, it lingers. She goes about her day, but the feeling sticks. The silence in her inbox is deafening. She refreshes her phone, hoping for the familiar notification, but it never comes. She might even check your social media, looking for any sign that you're thinking about her too, but you aren't. You've moved forward, and the more she realizes this, the more she feels the void. What once seemed like a minor change in her daily life now feels like a significant shift in her reality. She begins to wonder why she didn't appreciate you more, why she didn't see the effort you put in when she had the chance. And that regret, it's something she has to sit with. Because you're already looking ahead. She sees what she took for granted. Everything you gave, your time, your patience, your care, wasn't just a casual effort. It was an investment. And now that you're gone, she finally understands its worth. The good morning texts, the late night conversations, the way you listened when no one else did. The support you provided when she was struggling, the way you made her laugh when she was stressed. At the time, it all seemed small, routine, expected. She never stopped to think about how much effort you were putting in. Now it hits her. That security she once dismissed, that steady presence she barely acknowledged. Now it's a void nothing else can fill. The Stoics teach that detachment isn't about being cold, it's about knowing your value, and now, by stepping back, you've taken back control. Epictetus said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." By walking away, you've freed yourself from emotional dependence. You no longer need her recognition to validate your worth. You're no longer allowing her lack of appreciation to dictate your emotions. And that's when she feels it the most. She starts replaying old memories, scrolling through past conversations, realizing the nights you listened, the little things you did, and feeling the emptiness where your presence used to be. It's ironic, isn't it? When you were always there, she never noticed. But now that you're gone, she can't escape the regret. She replays old moments in her mind, times when you showed up when no one else did. She thinks about the times you sacrificed, the times you put her needs above your own, the moments she brushed off, assuming there would always be more. She might even try to fill the void with distractions, other people, hobbies, work, but nothing quite feels the same. That deep sense of security she had in you, it can't be easily replaced. She misses the comfort of knowing you'd always respond. She longs for the safety of your unwavering support. She begins to understand that what you gave wasn't ordinary, it was rare. And rare things, once lost, are hard to replace. She might try to reach out, hoping to reclaim what she once dismissed. But now, the power dynamic has changed. You are no longer waiting for her to see your worth. You already know it. And that is the ultimate shift. Not because she wants you back, not because she finally sees your value, but because you no longer need her to. And that realization, it hits harder than she ever expected. The fear of being replaced. The fear of being replaced is a raw, deeply unsettling emotion that many experience after a relationship ends. It's not just the loss of the person themselves, but the idea that someone else will come into their place and appreciate what they didn't. This fear stirs up something primal, an anxiety about being forgotten, overlooked, or worse, never truly valued for what you brought to the table. When this fear settles in, it can be a constant, gnawing presence in the back of the mind. This is particularly true for a woman who has always known that she could take you for granted, believing your presence was something that could be relied on without effort. She might have assumed you would always be there, no matter what, because that's how she experienced it at first. But when you confidently walk away, moving forward with your life and showing no signs of hesitation or second-guessing, that changes everything. She begins to realize that time doesn't wait for anyone. It moves on, whether you're ready or not, and so do you. She starts to understand that while she took your presence as a given, you didn't take her for granted. You respected yourself too much to keep yourself in a situation that didn't serve your growth. And now, she's faced with a reality she didn't expect, one where she might not be the center of your world anymore. You, the man who walked away, are now in high demand. Whether it's your ambition, your sense of self, or just your unwillingness to settle for anything less than respect, you're not someone who is easily replaceable. And for her, that's terrifying. It's the kind of realization that shakes her to her core, because now, for the first time, she sees that your value wasn't tied to her, and it never was. It was always about you, your journey, your own development. The questions that plague her mind now are ones that echo the insecurity of knowing that what she thought was permanent is anything but. She begins to ask herself, is he thinking about me? Does he miss me? Is he with someone else? These questions, each one more intense than the last, begin to unravel her confidence. And the worst part? She doesn't have the answers. She's left in the dark, without the comfort of knowing what's going on in your life. And that silence, your decision to move forward without needing any validation from her, makes it even worse. It's in the silence where fear and regret grow the loudest. She can't hear your thoughts. She can't see where you're going next. She can't even be sure that she still holds a place in your heart. But that silence, as deafening as it may be, is the most powerful thing you can give her. As a Stoic man, you don't need to seek revenge or stir up drama. You don't have to answer her questions or provide closure. You simply move forward. You embrace the future, knowing that the present moment is where your focus lies. There's no time to dwell on what could have been. You respect yourself enough to walk away and trust that you will find better things ahead, with or without her. This is where the Stoic man's true power lies. He understands that the world is constantly changing and people come and go. Nothing is permanent, and that includes relationships. He doesn't need to chase after anyone. He doesn't need to make anyone regret their decisions. His power comes from his ability to live his life according to his own values, to focus on growth and peace without being dependent on another person's approval. And that's what unsettles her, because in moving forward with confidence, without looking back, you show her what it truly means to be free. You show her that you are not defined by her or anyone else. The regret she feels now isn't just about losing you. It's about the fear of seeing someone else come into your life and appreciate what she failed to. She took your love for granted when it was right in front of her, and now, as she watches you move on, she fears someone else will recognize the value in you that she didn't. She might find herself wondering whether she missed out on the best thing she could have ever had. And the longer you stay silent, the stronger that fear becomes. Silence is louder than goodbye. Regret doesn't hit all at once. It doesn't show up like a storm, crashing in with overwhelming intensity. Instead, it creeps in slowly, almost imperceptibly, until it's too big to ignore. At first, she might convince herself that she's fine, that she doesn't care. But in the quiet moments, when the world is still and she's left alone with her thoughts, the weight of her actions starts to sink in. It's those late nights when she's lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, that the full impact of what she's lost begins to hit. The silence she once took for granted now feels like a reminder that she failed to appreciate you when she had the chance. She begins to understand that what she had with you was rare. You gave her something that few people are lucky enough to experience: love. respect, loyalty, and someone who truly valued her. But she didn't recognize it in the moment, and now, with time and distance between you, she realizes just how unique your connection was. The kind of connection that she may never find again. But here's the truth. You're not sitting around, waiting for her to realize what she lost. You've moved on. You're focused on your future, on building a life that serves you and brings you happiness. You're not hanging on to the past, not waiting for anyone to choose you. You've already chosen yourself. You understand that your presence is a gift, not a guarantee, and that if someone doesn't appreciate what you offer, it's their loss, not yours. You are not defined by anyone else's choices or actions. You are focused on the path ahead, one that is filled with growth, opportunity, and self-love. If this message resonates with you, drop a comment below. I've moved on. And remember, your presence is a gift. It's not something anyone should take for granted. You are worthy of love, respect, and the kind of relationship that brings you peace and fulfillment. Don't ever settle for less than you deserve. Now, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because real men don't chase, they walk away. They build their future with confidence, knowing that the right people will come into their lives when the time is right. The power of indifference. When silence speaks louder than words. When you stop caring, everything changes. She reaches out, testing the waters, but there's something different now. It's subtle, but she can feel it. A shift, an intangible energy that wasn't there before. You're not bitter. You're not angry. You're not trying to make her feel guilty. You just don't care the way you used to, and that difference, it's unsettling in a way that no confrontation could ever be. You've seen it before, haven't you? How people can get so used to the comfort of having someone around that they stop truly appreciating them. She had grown accustomed to you, always there, always available, always putting in the effort, always listening. It was second nature for you to show up for her, to be the one who supported her without hesitation. But she made a mistake. She took you for granted. She thought that you would always be there. After all, why wouldn't you be? She assumed time was an infinite resource and that you would always be by her side. But when you changed, when you stopped giving so freely, when you stopped showing up in the same way, it forced her to confront something she wasn't ready to face. The fact that you might not always be around. It forced her to realize that the constant presence she had relied on was no longer guaranteed. Your absence left a void, one that couldn't be easily filled. And that's when she started to feel the impact of her own actions. What she didn't understand then, and what she's starting to understand now, is that your change isn't about revenge. It's not about punishing her or seeking some kind of justice. It's the natural evolution of a person who has learned their own worth. You've come to understand, just as the Stoics taught, that seeking approval from others is a form of weakness. You've learned that your value doesn't depend on how others see you, but on how you see yourself. And with that understanding, you stepped back, not to manipulate or play games, but because you finally recognized that her actions spoke louder than any words you could say. She had already made her choice, and now she has to live with the consequences. At first, she might have assumed you were a given. After all, you were always there to fix things, to offer a kind word, to put in the effort, to be the one who would never let her down. She expected you to continue to be that person, to always be available, always eager to make things right. But then, when you pulled back, when you stopped reaching out, it was like a jolt to her system. The absence of your energy, your time, your care. It created an emptiness that she couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the lack of messages or the silence between your interactions. It was the absence of someone who had truly cared, who would have done anything for her, if only she had given the same energy in return. She might have thought you would always be there, that your care was a given, that you would never pull away. But when you did, it hit her harder than she expected. People often fail to recognize the value of something until it's no longer there. For her, that's exactly what happened. She had always had your warmth, your unwavering attention, the knowledge that someone out there was thinking of her, someone who would drop everything for her at a moment's notice. But now, that presence is gone, and she is left to wonder why. There's a strange irony here. People only realize the value of something once it's been lost. It's the warmth of a familiar voice, the comfort of knowing someone's always there when you need them, the security of unconditional love. When that disappears, it leaves a void, a gap in her life that no one else can fill. She might scroll through old messages, replay past conversations in her mind, and wonder if she made a mistake. Her pride may prevent her from admitting it to herself, but deep inside, she's questioning everything. And she waits. She waits for you to reach out, for you to show that you still care, but you don't. A man who knows his worth doesn't chase after validation. He doesn't beg for attention or plead to be chosen. He simply allows time to reveal the truth. And the truth? Once she realizes she took you for granted, she will feel the loss, not because you are punishing her, but because you've grown beyond the need for her approval. You've learned to value yourself, and when that realization hits her, it's like a cold splash of reality. You are no longer the person who would be there at her beck and call, always ready to offer reassurance, and that's when everything changes. It's not just missing you. It's realizing what she lost. It's not just that she misses you. It's that she misses the life she had when you were in it. She misses the energy you brought into her world, the support, the way you made everything feel easier, more manageable. She had something rare, something many people long for, and she let it slip through her fingers. At the beginning of your relationship, she took you for granted. She assumed that you would always be there, always available, always ready to listen, always willing to show up when she needed you. Your presence was something she could count on without thinking twice about it. But now that it's gone, she's left with the realization that what she had was precious, and she didn't even recognize it until it was too late. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "Everything in life is fleeting." For her, that lesson is hitting harder than ever. The moments she took for granted, the way you patiently listened when no one else did, the way you offered your time without hesitation, the way you made her feel safe, heard, and valued. Those moments are now haunting her. What she once dismissed as commonplace, as something that would always be there, now feels like a distant memory. The absence of your presence in her life is a cold reminder that the things she thought would never change have indeed changed. The silence you've given her? It's not an act of cruelty. It's not a game. It's the quiet acknowledgement of reality. You don't need to argue with her, explain yourself, or plead your case. You've already shown her who you are and what you were willing to give. You've already demonstrated your value, and now it's up to her to see it. Your silence is simply the natural consequence of the choices she made. She may try to fill the void you left with someone else, but deep down, she knows that nothing can replace what she lost. The consistency, the patience, the love, the care. It was all there, and now it's gone. And the worst part is, she only realizes its worth now that it's too late. She thought she had time, that she could always count on you, but now she knows better. The loss isn't just about missing you, it's about realizing what she had and what she let slip away. It's about the quiet, painful recognition that the man who once cared so deeply for her has moved on, no longer needing her validation, no longer willing to settle for someone who can't see his worth. That's when everything changes. Her pride may prevent her from admitting it, but the truth is inescapable. She knows deep inside that she made a mistake. And in that silence, in that space you've created, she's left to reflect, to reconsider, and to wonder if she'll ever find what she had with you again. But by then, it might be too late. The crossroads moment, her choice, not yours. In every relationship, there comes a pivotal moment, a crossroads, where one person is faced with a decision that will ultimately shape their future and the course of the relationship. For her, this crossroads can feel heavy, fraught with uncertainty, and burdened with pride, ego, or unresolved emotions. She must decide, does she swallow her pride, take accountability, and try to make things right? Or does she take the other path, pretending everything is fine, ignoring the underlying issues, and living with the lingering what-ifs of a relationship that could have been? The weight of this decision rests squarely on her shoulders, not yours. This is where many men fall into the trap of rushing to fill the silence, to offer reassurance, to present themselves as still available, still waiting, still hoping she'll recognize their worth. They become desperate, believing that if they just show up, if they just try a little harder, she'll realize the mistake she made and come back. They wait by the phone, checking for messages, overthinking every silence, trying to convince themselves that their presence is enough to reignite the connection they once shared. But this is not how a Stoic man approaches such a moment. A Stoic understands that attachment, when not reciprocated, is not just unhealthy, it can become a prison. A man who values himself doesn't lock himself inside that cage of waiting and hoping for someone else to choose him. He understands that true freedom comes from not needing anyone's validation to feel whole or complete. He understands that waiting for someone to come to their senses is an act of self-betrayal, a relinquishing of his own power. Instead, a Stoic man gives her the space to make her choice. He lets the silence linger. He doesn't rush to fill the void, because he knows that sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is simply be absent when needed. He understands that only when she feels the emptiness of his absence, when the late-night conversations, the spontaneous laughter, the quiet reassurance that he was always there, does she truly understand what she had. These things, so easily overlooked when they are constant, become impossible to ignore when they are gone. When she realizes that the man who once filled her world with his presence has faded from it, she begins to face the truth of what she lost. For him, it's not about playing games or trying to manipulate her into coming back. It's simply about acknowledging a profound truth. His worth does not depend on her acknowledgement. A man who knows his value does not place the responsibility for his happiness on someone else's choices. He makes decisions based on his own principles, his own growth, and his own sense of self-worth. He trusts that if she's meant to come back, she will, but that does not mean he will wait around for that moment. His life is already moving forward. He is already becoming the best version of himself. For her, the crossroads moment is not easy. It forces her to confront her own vulnerabilities, her pride, and the choices she has made. The silence left behind is a mirror, reflecting back not just what she lost, but also what she might have failed to appreciate when it was there. A man who moves on, who no longer waits around hoping to be chosen, forces her to reckon with the consequences of her actions. She can either swallow her pride and reach out, recognizing that she has made a mistake, or she can keep pretending everything is fine and live with the regret of wondering what could have been. But the Stoic man is not concerned with what she decides. He has no need to control the outcome. The choice is hers to make, and the responsibility for the decision falls on her alone. He simply carries on, knowing that his path, his journey, is not dependent on her choosing him. This is the power of a man who understands that true strength lies in detachment, not in neglect, but in the freedom to pursue one's own life without the weight of another person's choices hanging over him. A man who knows his worth doesn't look back. Now, imagine a man who has spent years giving, bending over backward, always showing up when needed, always available to offer his time, energy, and support. He was the one who made sacrifices, the one who always put others first. He showed up to solve problems, to ease worries, to be the steady hand when things got difficult. But over time, his constant availability, his willingness to give without asking for anything in return, became an assumption. She began to expect his presence, his efforts, without appreciating the value of what he brought to the table. He was no longer seen as a partner, but as a fixture, something that would always be there, just waiting to be called upon. One day he wakes up to the reality of this imbalance. He understands that he has been giving too much of himself, to the point where he has neglected his own needs, his own growth, and his own peace. He realizes that by constantly bending over backward for her, he has allowed himself to lose sight of his own ambitions, his personal goals, and his inner calm. So, he makes a choice. He stops. He stops prioritizing her over himself. He stops waiting for validation. He redirects his energy from her into building a life that needs no one's approval. He starts investing in himself, nurturing his own growth, and focusing on his own peace. He no longer depends on someone else's recognition to feel validated. At first, she doesn't notice. She assumes he'll always be there, just like before. She's so accustomed to his presence, to his unwavering support, that she doesn't even consider the possibility that he might not always be available. She believes that he will return, that he will come back to the same old routine. She thinks that his absence is just a temporary phase, something that will pass. But as the weeks go by and he doesn't come running back, the reality starts to sink in. She begins to realize that the man who used to be so constant, so reliable, has changed. He's no longer the one who drops everything to cater to her needs. He's no longer the man who can be counted on to be at her beck and call. He's gone, and now she's left to deal with the consequences of her own actions. For him, this shift is not about punishment. It's not about trying to make her feel guilty or trying to make her regret her choices. It's simply the natural progression of a man who has learned to value himself. A true Stoic man doesn't withdraw to punish. He withdraws because he has come to understand that he cannot continue to pour into a relationship where he is not being replenished. He recognizes that by giving too much of himself without receiving the same in return, he was diminishing his own sense of self-worth. Now he lives with purpose. He lives with intention. He focuses on his own ambitions, his own personal growth, and his own happiness. He no longer looks back, no longer wonders if she will come to realize the value of what she lost. He doesn't need her recognition to affirm his worth. Like a king who doesn't beg for recognition or approval, a man who knows his value doesn't chase after validation. He simply lives in his own power, fully aware that those who fail to appreciate him will eventually be left with nothing but regret. The regret she feels when she realizes what she has lost is not a reflection of his actions, but a reflection of her own choices. The man who once gave her his time, his love, and his attention is now gone, and she is left with the emptiness of what could have been. But for the Stoic man, this is not a moment of victory or revenge. It's simply the natural outcome of living a life in alignment with his values. He doesn't look back because he knows that the best way to move forward is by never looking back at what no longer serves him. He has learned the art of letting go, of accepting that people come and go, and that his life, his happiness, and his peace are not dependent on anyone's choices, but his own. The final lesson: your absence speaks louder than words. In relationships, it's all too easy to believe that the more effort you put in, the more likely your feelings and commitment will be recognized. You dedicate yourself fully, always available, always reaching out, always there to listen, comfort, and support. You invest your energy, time, and emotions, expecting that this will be reciprocated. But one of the harshest realities in relationships is that people often don't appreciate what is always available. They become accustomed to it. It becomes the norm, the routine, and unfortunately, routine can breed complacency. This complacency is a dangerous thing, because when someone starts taking the love, attention, and presence of another person for granted, they stop valuing it. What once felt like a precious connection becomes just another part of their daily life. They forget how much effort went into building that connection, how much emotional investment has been made. They might stop putting in their own effort, and without realizing it, they start to take the person who has always been there for granted. It's like a person who is handed a beautiful, rare gift every day and eventually stops noticing its value. The act of giving becomes expected, and the giver becomes invisible. This is where the shift begins. The moment you realize that you've been taken for granted, the moment you sense that your presence no longer holds the same value in the eyes of the other person, that's when you need to take a step back. Stepping back isn't about withdrawing in anger or trying to punish anyone. It's not about playing games. Instead, it's about creating space for both yourself and the other person to reflect. It's about allowing them to feel the absence that your constant presence once filled. Initially, this absence might go unnoticed. She may not even realize that something is missing. Perhaps she's so used to your availability that the thought of you stepping back doesn't even cross her mind. But eventually, the change will be felt. It might not be immediately clear, but over time, she'll sense the void, and that's when the true power of your silence kicks in. What was once taken for granted is now something she deeply misses. The absence is not just physical, it's emotional, energetic, and intentional. Your silence isn't the absence of words. It's the absence of your care, your attention, your energy. It's the space that you've created for her to notice what she has lost. Not through your words, but through the emptiness that now surrounds her. This is the essence of self-respect. When you step back, you are showing her that you will no longer be the one to chase. You will no longer seek her validation or approval. You have given enough. The most important thing here is that your actions, stepping back and allowing the absence to speak for itself, are rooted in self-respect. It's about understanding your own value and not feeling the need to prove it to someone who has already failed to appreciate it. When you stop chasing, you stop seeking affirmation, and in doing so, you teach the other person that your worth isn't something they can take for granted. You show them, without a single word, that you have boundaries. You are a person with dignity, and you will not tolerate being undervalued. The reality is, whether she reaches out or not is entirely her choice. The ball is now in her court. You've already shown up. You've already made the effort. You've already given your time, your energy, your love. And now, you allow her the space to reflect on that. You don't need to beg for her attention or approval. You don't need to try to convince her of your worth. The silence does that for you. Your absence becomes the loudest statement you can make. But here's the key point. This isn't about revenge. It's not about getting back at her or seeking some form of retribution. True strength comes not from holding grudges or trying to make someone feel bad for their mistakes. True strength comes from the ability to let go, to walk away, and to move forward with your life. It's the strength to focus on your own journey, your own growth, and your own happiness without needing anyone else to validate it. When you step back and focus on yourself, you give yourself the opportunity to heal and to grow. You put your energy into things that matter to you, whether that's your personal goals, your career, your friendships, or simply your own well-being. You no longer wait around for someone to realize what they've lost. Instead, you shift your focus to living your life on your own terms. The absence of your energy and attention isn't meant to make her feel guilty. It's meant to show her that you respect yourself enough to not chase someone who doesn't value what you bring. And when the moment comes, when she realizes what she's lost, it won't be you who needs to prove anything. By then, you will have already moved forward. You will be too busy living the life you were meant to live. You will have grown into a person who knows their worth and no longer needs to seek validation from anyone. You've learned that true strength is not about clinging to something that no longer serves you, but about moving forward and creating the life you deserve. In the end, your absence teaches more than any words ever could. It teaches that your presence is valuable, that your time and energy are precious, and that you won't settle for anything less than mutual respect. It teaches that you have the strength to walk away from situations that no longer align with who you are and what you deserve. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches that your life is yours to live on your terms. When you realize that, everything else falls into place. True strength isn't about holding on to something that's already gone. It's about knowing when to let go, when to walk away, and when to let the silence of your absence speak louder than anything else ever could.